Sugar is so much worse than you probably think. You've been told it's unhealthy, but while that's true, it's a lot deeper than that. If you're like me, you've kind of assumed that obesity is completely preventable and that like obese people were just lazy or whatever, which there's still some truth to that, but it's actually like way more complicated. So the fitness buffs on YouTube will repeat the phrase, a calorie is a calorie, verbatim, and that's just a great way to get people to follow you because they can think they can lose weight while eating shit like Twinkies or whatever. Technically true, but not really at all. In order to understand why this is, there's a couple things I need to explain. First off, sugar is extremely addictive. You probably already know this just based off of personal experience, but let me prove it to you. This graph shows the dopamine receptors of a cokehead compared to that of a normal person. The receptors on the cokehead are a lot more dulled out because it kind of dulls out your dopamine receptors because once you do that, there's not much you do that really comes near it. That's why it's so addictive. And this graph is the dopamine of the receptors of an obese person compared to that of a normal person. The effect of the sugar is not nearly as pronounced, but when you take into account the fact that this is a completely legal substance that we all eat every single day, it's pretty alarming. Alright, so you've heard of the two hormones, leptin and insulin. These are the two main hormones in hunger. Leptin is pretty simple. The more leptin you have, the more energy you have. So that's why you see the sugar high in little kids. They'll eat a cookie and they'll get a bunch of energy for about 2 hours and run it all off. But why don't we see the sugar high in adults? You know, the cliche is that a little kid will eat a cookie and run around, not 30-year-old man. I'll answer this in a few minutes, but there's a couple more things you need to understand. Insulin is similar to leptin in that it also tells you to stop eating. But instead of telling you to burn off all the calories, it tells your fat cells to store it. Basically, when you have more insulin, you store more fat. So why don't we see the sugar high in adults? Remember, leptin is what's responsible for this. So there has to be something blocking adults from seeing all of this leptin. Turns out leptin acts on the exact same neurons that insulin does. So when you have an excess in one of them, the effect of the other one is less pronounced. So when you have too much insulin, you can't really read the leptin as much, so you don't get as much of an urge to burn off all the calories, and you more so store it. So what causes excess insulin? Excess sugar. I'm pretty sure we all already knew that. You may think that you need fructose to live, and that's absolutely true. Thing is, we make it on our own. You can make fructose to power your cells, and you don't need all this excess sugar. But it's not necessarily the sugar the issue, it's the added sugar. It's separating the sugar compounds from the fruit. Ancestors, we'd eat like 15 grams of sugars a day from berries and stuff. And even when we would eat it, it would be packed with fiber and nutrients, so we wouldn't overeat it. But now that we separated the sugar from the berries, we can overeat as much as we can, to the point where the average American eats 140 grams of sugar a day compared to the, 15, 20 that our ancestors would eat. Basically, our body is not meant to handle all the sugar, and it is the cause behind a lot of anabolic diseases. So how do you fix this issue? It's not that complicated. Just cut out excess sugar. This seems like a pretty daunting task, but it really isn't. You'll miss ice cream or whatever for a little bit, but after a while, ice cream seems disgusting because it just has way too much sugar. And if you don't find that, which is pretty rare, you probably will find added sugar disgusting after a little bit. There's no harm in having a cheat day every once in a while, but having excess sugar every day is a lot worse than you might think. Thank you for watching this. All of the information here was from the Fat Chance Fructose 2.0 presentation. It's very informative. I'll link it in the description.